Everyone knows the brain protects you from pain. What almost nobody knows is that it lies to you, to do it every single day without asking permission. Denial. Denial is your mind refusing to accept a fact because the fact is too heavy to carry right now. It's not stupidity. It's a load-bearing wall going up in real time. Here's the mechanism. The moment a threat registers, your brain floods you with the option to simply not process it. Information hits your senses, but it never fully lands. You nod at the diagnosis, the breakup, the layoff, and some part of you keeps living like it didn't happen. Here's the thing. Denial doesn't feel like lying. It feels calm. That's what makes it dangerous. You think you're being strong when you're actually just delaying the bill. Eventually, the delayed pain arrives anyway, usually bigger, usually at a worse time. It buys you peace today and charges you interest tomorrow. Repression. Repression is your brain taking a memory too dangerous to look at and burying it below conscious reach. You don't choose to forget. The forgetting happens to you. Mechanically, this is your mind sorting the threat from safety, then locking the threat in a drawer with no handle. The memory doesn't disappear, it just goes dark. You can't retrieve what you can't see, so you walk through life with a locked room inside you and no memory of locking it. Here's where it gets interesting. The buried thing still steers you. It shows up as unexplained anxiety, a flinch at certain smells, a mood you can't name. You believe you moved on. Your body never got the memo. That's why some fears make no logical sense to the person feeling them. You don't erase the pain. You just lose the map to where you hit it. Projection. Projection is taking a feeling too shameful to own and pinning it on someone else instead. You accuse them of exactly what you can't admit in yourself. Here's how it runs. Your brain detects an unacceptable impulse, jealousy, anger, desire, and instead of tagging it as yours, it tags it as theirs. You genuinely believe the accusation. That's not manipulation. That's the trick working on you first. Here's the part most people don't sit with. The people you judge hardest are often mirrors, not strangers. The trait that enrages you in someone else is frequently the one you've refused to look at in yourself. This quietly poisons relationships because you're arguing with your own reflection and calling it them. You think you're seeing their flaws. You're actually seeing your own, wearing their face. Rationalization is building a reasonable-sounding excuse after you've already made an emotional decision. The logic comes second. The feeling came first and hired a lawyer. Your brain hates the discomfort of, I did that for a bad reason, so it manufactures a better story, fast. You didn't skip the gym because you're avoiding discomfort. You skipped it because rest is important. The explanation slots in so smoothly, you never notice the swap happening. Here's the uncomfortable angle. The smarter you are, the better you get at this. Intelligence doesn't protect you from self-deception. It arms it. Smart people build airtight cases for choices dumber people can't even justify to themselves. That means your best arguments for your own behavior deserve the most suspicion, not the least. The story feels like honesty. It's actually a very good defense attorney. Displacement is redirecting an emotion toward a safer target than the one that actually caused it. Your boss humiliates you, and your dog gets yelled at an hour later. The mechanism is pure risk management. Confronting the real source feels dangerous. Job loss, conflict, rejection. So the emotional charge gets rerouted to whoever's nearby and can't fire you or leave you. The nervous system just wants the pressure released somewhere. Here's the thing nobody says out loud. The people closest to you absorb the most damage precisely because they're safest to hurt. Love doesn't protect your family from your anger. It makes them the most convenient target for it. This is how entirely unrelated people end up paying for a stranger's rudeness at work. The person who caused your pain walks away clean. the person who loves you pays the bill. Regression. Regression is reverting to an earlier, younger way of coping when the present moment overwhelms your current capacity. Adults sulk, slam doors, or go silent, all behaviors from a much younger version of themselves. Under acute stress, the brain's newer, more sophisticated coping tools go offline first, because they take more energy to run. What's left are the oldest, most automatic patterns, the ones installed in childhood. You're not choosing immaturity. You're falling back to whatever software loaded first. Here's where it gets interesting. The age you regress to often marks exactly when a particular wound first formed. Someone who goes mute during conflict may be protecting a 6-year-old who learned that speaking up made things worse. Watch someone's worst moments, and you're watching their oldest ones replayed. It looks like weakness. It's actually a timestamp. Sublimation. Sublimation is taking a raw, often unacceptable impulse and channeling it into something productive or creative instead. The urge doesn't vanish. It gets redirected into a socially rewarded outlet. This is considered the healthiest defense mechanism because the energy still discharges. It just discharges as art, ambition, or discipline instead of harm. Rage becomes a boxing habit. Grief becomes a novel. The nervous system doesn't care where the energy goes, only that it goes somewhere. Here's the uncomfortable part. Some of what you admire most in high achievers is unprocessed pain wearing a nicer outfit. The relentless work ethic, the perfectionism, the drive people praise is frequently a wound that never got named directly. That doesn't make the achievement fake. It makes the applause slightly misdirected. The trophy is real. What's underneath it usually isn't peace. Reaction formation. Reaction formation is when you feel one thing so intensely and unacceptably that your mind flips it into its exact opposite, performed loudly. The person disgusted by an urge becomes its most vocal opponent. The mechanism works like overcorrection on a steering wheel. The original impulse is registered as dangerous, so the brain doesn't just suppress it, it manufactures an equal and opposite public stance to bury the evidence, including from yourself. The louder the opposition, the more energy it's likely defending against. Here's the thing most people don't sit with. Intensity is often a better clue than content. Someone's extreme, exhausting hatred of something can say more about their own buried desire than their stated values do. This explains a lot of moral outrage that feels strangely personal and disproportionate. The performance looks like conviction. Underneath, it's often containment. Avoidance. Avoidance is simply refusing to engage with a person, place, task, or feeling that carries emotional risk. It looks passive. It is actually a very active decision made below conscious awareness. Mechanically, your brain treats emotional threat almost identically to physical threat. Same alarm system, same impulse to create distance. So you delay the email, skip the appointment, dodge the conversation. Each avoidance delivers a small hit of relief, which is exactly what teaches your brain to keep doing it. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Every avoided thing doesn't shrink while you're away from it. It grows, because your imagination fills the silence with worse outcomes than reality usually delivers. The unopened problem becomes scarier than the opened one ever was. Relief today is rarely free. It's a loan against a bigger fear tomorrow. Avoidance feels like safety. It's actually a compound interest in dread. Intellectualization is dealing with a painful situation by thinking about it instead of feeling it. You turn grief into a lecture, heartbreak into a case study, trauma into a TED Talk you give yourself. The brain does this because analysis feels controllable and emotion doesn't. Facts have edges, feelings don't. So you retreat into data, theory, and detached language, because a well-organized paragraph about your pain is far less terrifying than the pain itself sitting in your chest. Here's the part that stings. Sounding insightful about your own suffering can be mistaken, even by you, for having actually processed it. Understanding a wound intellectually and healing from it are two completely different processes that just happen to use the same vocabulary. This is why some of the most articulate people about trauma are also the least regulated by it. Explaining the storm perfectly doesn't mean you're not still standing in it. Every one of these mechanisms did the same job at some point in your life. It kept something from breaking you before you were ready to face it. That's not a flaw. That's the design working exactly as intended. But a defense that never gets questioned stops protecting you and starts running you. The same wall that once kept the flood out eventually keeps you from ever leaving the room. So the real question isn't which of these you use. You use all of them at different times for different wounds. The question is which one you're using right now and whether you've looked closely enough to notice.